Peace, everyone. Welcome back to another BABTalk. Your boy Geechee Motivator and Asafo is here. And we have a special guest for episode 8. We talk about black class warfare and worker power. Pretty sure y'all seen him on our platform before. So we'll let the brother Diallo come and introduce himself. And we'll get started. Remember, if you got your questions from YouTube, just put it in the comments. Put them in the comments, and or we'll get to them later if it's not pressing at the beginning. But as me and Asafo do, we'll just go back and forth with the questions and let Diallo knock them out the park. Go ahead, Diallo. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Diallo. People call me Bro Diallo. I'm a revolutionary Pan-Africanist, and I, engage on social media to advocate for Pan-Africanist, revolutionary Pan-Africanist liberation struggle, and to, engage in discourse about, developing our ideas, strategies, and values and protocols for revolutionary struggle. So I'm very happy and honored to be here.
Awesome. All right, brother Asafo, we can get started with the first question.
Yeah, so the first question, we'll get right into it. We're glad to have you with us, brother. The first question that I want to ask you is about our previous discussion regarding black capitalism. You made some remarks regarding entrepreneurship and generational wealth, and what we should really see generational wealth as opposed to what we've been given as the idea of generational wealth. Could you share those comments with us again?
Okay. I'll start with the entrepreneur. My mic is, all right. I'll start with the entrepreneur. I think you recall me making my my rant against entrepreneur and entrepreneurialism, saying that I think that entrepreneurs are given a false elevation and falsely and inappropriately celebrated. That an entrepreneur, there has never been, and this really came to head with Ice Cube's contract with Black America, and that kind of brought together all of this new mythology about the impact and relevance of entrepreneurialism and Black entrepreneurs specifically to Black people, Black empowerment. And now the entrepreneurs are basically the folk heroes of this modern late capitalist era. And throughout my study, my research of history in general and Black movements in particular, there has never been an entrepreneurial struggle, entrepreneurial led, entrepreneurial sustained, or entrepreneurial advanced movement. I'm not against any individual attempting to become an entrepreneur. I am definitely and aggressively opposed to entrepreneurs or the concept of entrepreneurialism being brought to the forefront of Black liberation, because that it is just not. Entrepreneurs are some of the most vulnerable people in the society that stands the most to lose the most in any type of societal upheaval. Entrepreneur means to be conservative. So I'm not telling Black folks don't engage in entrepreneurialism right now. I might say that later in tonight's discussion. But what I'm saying for Black people as a collective, we have to demote the Black entrepreneur. It is not something to celebrate. It is not something to allow to lead. It is something you are free to engage in as an individual or as a group if you come together and get your little buyers club or little business group. But entrepreneurialism is inadequate and dysfunctional when it comes to revolutionary change and revolutionary struggle. So that was really what was behind my rant, to say, I was really sick. I had been in almost a half a dozen debates and one formal debate discussing Ice Cube and many of his ilk, because he believes that entrepreneurs will lead. And we found this out. Du Bois, the father of this entrepreneurial myth with his talented 10, even Du Bois had come to see the error of his ways and reorient and reconstruct his concept of the Negro elite, the talented 10th, being the leaders or being people that are worthy or capable of leading Black people to liberation, or even any way to protect us from the ravages of colonization, oppression, racism, and so on and so forth. So that was behind my anti-entrepreneurial rant. I am fine that if you as an individual or you as your grouping want to engage in entrepreneurialism, I am opposed to that being a standard or that being a criteria for leadership in Black revolutionary struggle. I treat entrepreneurialism the same way Malcolm treated religion. Leave it in the closet. Now, if your entrepreneurialism and what you gain from entrepreneurialism and you can put material resources in the revolutionary struggle, you are engaged in what is called revolutionary suicide, or class treason, which I support, I embrace. But you're not worthy of praise simply because you engage or are successful in entrepreneurship. Secondly, capitalism is capitalism. As far as Black capitalism, I don't believe there's any such thing. I think Black capitalism is like Black Christianity or Black Islam. It's so alien to African people. It is so alien to our disposition, our mentality, our culture, our history, that it's just Black people doing capitalism. So I say there's no capitalism is capitalism. And if anything, it is born out of white Western culture, the white Western mentality, the Urugu or the Iceman, or whatever term we use. There's no such thing as a Black capitalist. And what's even more tragic about that is 90% or more of the Black people who identify as capitalism, identify as capitalists, are not capitalists. They are not capitalist in function. There's a difference between supporting capitalism, meaning that I like capitalism. I support capitalism. But if you do not live off the dividends, number one, if you don't own the means of production, and you generate revenue of dividends is your primary source of income, you are not engaging in capitalism and you are not a capitalist. Now, there are many working class pro-capitalist people, and those people are class traders, and many of them are also race traders. There's a lot of overlap between race treason and class treason because capitalism is rooted in colonization, enslavement, and hyper-exploitation of both African people and African resources. So I don't buy into the concept. It's a misnomer to say a Black capitalist or Black capitalism. You are just a capitalist. You are just a parasite, and you're a parasite who happens to be Black. So Black capitalism is nothing but at best a mimicry of white capitalists. And many of these wealthy Blacks or rich Blacks are not even capitalists. Because let's take, for instance, Michael Jordan. You have on one side Michael Jordan, who has a name, who has a branding, who has I don't even think Michael Jordan owns his likeness anymore. His trademark. Mm-hmm. I think that's been trademarked by a company, has bought that from him. But Michael Jordan is very wealthy. He's a billionaire. But the Nike Corporation has the infrastructure, the factories, the raw materials, the shipping lanes, the armed military factions that protect their foreign overseas interest. That Michael Jordan owns and controls none of that. That's where the capitalists dwell, in the raw resources, in the factory and manufacturing. So Michael Jordan will be able to pass on a shit ton of fiat to his children. But Philip Knight, the CEO of Nike, he's going to pass not just a shit ton of fiat, but the infrastructure for a global distribution and manufacturing network. That's capitalism. And most wealthy Blacks are nowhere near that. They're nowhere near participating in that. So we have a lot of illusions about what capitalism are, but the capitalists are very clever because they understood that capitalists are such a small minority. There was a socialist philosopher that said the capitalists are so small in number, if we could overthrow them by simply spitting at them, because the spit of the working people could drown them in a deluge because they're so small in number. So what the capitalists did is say, hey, let's give other people the illusion that they have common interests with us. So we'll let people buy this 401ks and now this crypto. They have different ways for working class people, the oppressed, the exploited class to participate in capitalism, to give themselves the illusion and give their fellow working class people the illusion that they are participants and that their interests lie with the capitalists. So you can go online and say, can I curse? Oh, yeah. Fuck Michael Jordan or fuck Elon Musk. And dozens of working class exploited people will jump in and attack you. Mm-hmm. You know, they will bum rush you, and none of Elon. And I ask people all the time, are you on Ice Cube's public relations team? I'm like, if you're not on the payroll of, it's just weird. It's like when 6ix9ine snitched on the 9 Trey Bloods. I didn't hear nothing from the 9 Trey Bloods. Everybody that was mad at 6ix9ine, I'm like, if you're not a 9 Trey Blood, what the hell are you mad about? What is your problem with this? Over there, that's their business. So it's the same way with capitalists, but black people false claiming. That's what they call it. And when you claiming a set you ain't got shit to do with, when you claiming a set that's not on your side, but is actually a threat to you, that's called false claiming. And but the capitalists were very, very cunning in that, giving regular people, you know, I got these black stock gurus. There's some brother in jail they claim is a stock genius, and he ain't even eligible to buy or purchase or trade stocks. And the institutional investors, the DuPonts, you know, the Cargills, the institutional investors, the small 1% of investors own well over 80% of stock. And in the stock market, they took a small sliver of the stock market and made it available and gave it to unions, teachers unions, and Teamsters, and all these other little small groups to pull our little pennies together to buy something in stock. So when you're at home working day to day for your job, and then they were like, well, the Dow is down 3%. You're like, oh, Lord. When you work for your money, you don't live off of dividends. That is not relevant to your existence or well-being. And they give us daily, regular stock updates. They don't give us labor updates. They don't tell us how many injuries there were in the field of labor. They don't tell us anything about what is relevant to the workers. They only tell, oh, the stock is down, stock is up. Oh, this is how, and they really got us conditioned to think, oh, Lord, there's been a contraction in the market. You got people who don't even own stocks that got the language or the vocabulary of the stock market. And that is psychological warfare. That is psychological mental warfare. And when they say there's a shift or a downturn in the market, that's no different than saying there's a war in heaven amongst the angels. It's some fictional place you're never going to get to and has no bearing or impact on your life. And we're paying attention to shit that has no impact on our life and invested in shit that is not relevant to us, while we neglect the very things that are relevant and have material, real world impacts on our life. And finally, generational wealth. Generational wealth is only the quality of the land, the quality of the air, the quality of the water, and the quality of the social relations. That is what generational wealth is. Who cares how much money Beyonce and Jay-Z leaves for Blue Ivy if she has to live in a goddamn bunker eating synthesized food that came out of a 3D printer, you know, eating what they call that Soylent Green. Who cares if Blue Ivy has to spend all the wealth that Jay-Z and Beyonce leave for her? If she has to spend that on guards, electrified fences, drone surveillance, and to protect ourselves from the starving masses, what quality of life is that? How many rich niggas are we going to have to watch go completely insane in the tabloids before we figured out, man, you know, maybe there's a different way to go? Because even when we win, we lose. How many more? How much longer? You know, and then y'all go from saying hashtag Will Smith, hashtag goals. And now y'all got to find 2 other rich Negroes to follow in behind because they embarrassing themselves on a global scale. And y'all just keep hopping. Just go the other way. Just come over here, you know, where there's quality of social relationships and we can fight for things that are relevant. Generational wealth is only rooted in the material environment, the quality environment. Every year, more and more Black women, including Blue Ivy, including the Obama's daughters, has more and more dioxin in their breast milk, has more and more, you know, now they got this thing called microplastic. The plastic doesn't biodegrade, but they're finding that it breaks down into smaller and smaller particulate matter that is so small that it becomes airborne and we inhale it and it collects in our fatty tissue. And women have more fatty or adipose tissue than men do. So this is crippling women. Evolution, these are evolutionary scale problems, which means that they will be passed down for multiple generations. This ain't just something you can, well, just stay alive and you can get through it, or my child would have a better life. The life-sustaining capacity of the planet Earth is being destroyed for short-term profits. And we talking about generational wealth is written in a bank account. And we know these crackers flip money like, you know, from doubloons. Remember, everybody, I'm going to chase doubloons. I'm going to chase dollars. Now we chasing crypto. You know, that's not generational wealth because they can flip it on a dime. A white man, there are white men in this world that could wake up tomorrow and say, I think I'm going to collapse the dollar just for the hell of it. You know, I think I'm going to raise the interest rate. You know, I think I'm going to shift. Oh, we're going to go from post-industrial to pre-industrial. They can flip it. You don't put your life, your generations, your descendants' lives in the hands of literal psychopaths. So I think we need to redefine what generational wealth. Generational wealth is say, in my lifetime, from the time I was born to the time I die, is the water quality better? Is the air has fewer contaminants? Is the soil less radioactive? Are there fewer nuclear bombs when I'm born versus when I die? That is generational wealth, and that is an inheritance you give a damn about, you know. And if you think so, I'm sorry, but okay.
No,
I think
so tell me this: there's even people in the African Center, Pan-African, whatever they want to call themselves this week, that would say the U.S. will never be a socialist country. Like, is that your goal? You're trying to turn this country to a socialist country? That'll never happen. What's your response to that?
Right. The United States as it exists will never be a socialist country. And yeah, sake, so United States ain't gonna be any kind of country under capitalism either. United States is doomed. United States is showing every element of an empire in collapse. Even conservative white men like the late Chalmers Johnson wrote books like Blowback and Collapse. So this system is eroding, and it's literally barbarism. They're literally creating legislation saying that if some people are protesting for justice, you can ram your car through them. If someone stand your ground laws, this nation is eroding already. And even the people who are most prosperous in this system have high rates of anxiety. I mean, this is Marxist alienation. If you want to know anything about white folks, Marx told on white folks. That's why they hate him. They don't hate Marx because he came up with an alternate economic. They hate Marx because Marx told their secrets. Marx is the Tekashi 6ix9ine of Western culture. He snitched on white folks, and that's why they hate Marx. All over the world, white folks hate Marx. This system is already decaying. So when the system is collapsing, it can fall one or two ways. It can fall to the left, which means it will have more progressivism, or it will fall to the right, which means fascism, and the society will literally cannibalize itself through internal violence, or what is called the balkanization of America. America's doomed either way because capitalism is unsustainable. It's not a sustainable system. This country isn't 300 years old, and it has elements of decay that we saw that it took societies of the past, the Roman Empire. It took the Roman Empire almost 3,000 years to reach the state that the United States has reached in its decay in just less than 300. So yeah, who cares what America can or can't do? We're talking about what African people can or will or won't do.
Yeah, I know you read a lot of work from Chris Hedges, and one thing that you said regarding the environment and the death of the ecology of the planet, I remember him making a remark in one of his lectures saying that maybe perhaps like people have theorized that is why that we haven't been able to find intelligent life on other planets, because the energy that it takes to bring forth intelligent life forms or technologically advanced life forms, that energy ultimately dooms that civilization. And it seems that we're at a point now where the energy that brought forth these technological advances, and I put that in quotation marks, will ultimately be our destruction.
Hey, listen, he's speaking for white folks. When I read white folks, I assume they're speaking exclusively about white folks. So that's white folks. As far as black people, we know that African technological scientific methodology, Africans were able to build metropolis and establish national, international, regional trade and diplomatic relations for centuries, tens of thousands of years. So he's like, well, there's this issue that white people have, even the good white folks, you know, the good whites, that they think if white people can't do it, then it's not doable. So, you can't have a technologically interstellar civilization without destroying yourself, because they really believe if white folks can't do it, you can't have an economy based on trade, trust, cooperation, and sharing. That's not possible. You can't have a society without prisons and orphanages, you know, because if we couldn't do it, how can the Asians, can the Africans, and the Native Americans, and white people? So when you're reading white people, you have to understand, even if it's a good white person, they all came up under the indoctrination that nothing was done before white folks did it, and nothing can be done until white folks do it. So as far as that, he could say that about white folks. As far as black people, when we take back over, then we could have that discussion. But as far as right now, we know for a fact that the Nile River civilizations built up some of the largest cities and some of the largest structures and had some of the most complex systems of trade and formal educational institutions. And at the exact same time, they had the Nile crocodile, they had the hippos, they had some of the largest lions ever surrounding Abyssinia. So what that tells us is the same thing with the Mayans and the Aztecs and the 5 civilized tribes of the Iroquois Confederacy. What that tells us is that non-European people are able to create civilization and build up complex societies with complex social relations and advance their technologies without destroying their ecosystems. They're able to build symbiotic human civilization. We know that, because even now you go to a zoo, where do you see the animal exhibits? They have the Africa exhibit, the Asia exhibit, they have the Mesoamerican exhibit. There is no European exhibit, because the Europeans, just to make those musty ass castles, had to destroy all their forest. All the major predators of Europe. There were bears and lions, and even if you go back far enough, there were great apes who dwelled in the European and the steppes. And the Europeans, the whiter they got, the more ecological destruction they came in. When the Europeans first got here to the so-called New World, it said that it would take them 1,000 generations to reach the shore, because there were so many resources. There were so many fish in the river, it could topple boats. When I first moved here to Chicago 11 years ago, I could go to Washington Park and turn over a stone, and there'd be all kind of little creatures and worms and bugs. There were bees and bats. And just now, in the 11 years I've been here, Washington Park is almost devoid of life. The insects. So white folks are like, well, we can't build technologically advanced civilizations without destroying the ecosystems and the environment. So who can? And I say to black folks, don't adopt. We can't use their analysis of themselves or define ourselves according to their failures. We also can't define ourselves according to their successes. We shouldn't pursue their privilege, and we shouldn't pursue their pathology. So that's what I would say to Chris Hedges. Yeah, keep talking, but make sure keep our name out your mouth. Talk about you and yours. Don't talk about what we can and can't do.
So tell me this. You said you're a revolutionary, and we have folks who sometimes claim themselves revolutionary, or we have bad salesmen who can't sell their products saying they have revolutionary burnout. I want to put a quote of Asafo Shakur, who said, "Theory without practice is just as incomplete as practice without theory." I want you to respond to people who dismiss studying, dismiss reading as a part of struggling, and tell us what revolutionary or revolution is and what it isn't.
Well, Bobby E. Wright said that menticide is the greatest threat to African people. Since we were brought here under chattel slavery, African people have been under the strong body, weak mind view. where the Africans were valued according to the work they can do and devalued according to the philosophical elements. And so we adopted that, just like we adopted a lot of other things, and we have carried that forward. It has been refined somewhat, but we are still under the thing that all that talking, we ain't got time for talking, that there is no time for discussion, even though I tell even the most militant, gun-toting, bloodthirsty African warriors, I tell them, if you look at the Pentagon, everywhere you find a military base, every military base on the planet Earth, and there's thousands of them, has a library and it has a lecture hall. Every single one of them. That's the first thing. They all have gun ranges, libraries, and lecture halls. In order to be a general, every U.S. general has a PhD level education in the U.S. military, and they must be published in peer-reviewed articles. Outside of the U.S. Library of Congress, the largest federal library there is the military library. So war is both a material, physical conflict and a scholarly, intellectual conflict. So many of our people who reject discourse, debate, analysis, critique are under the conditioning that the African, especially African men, should be valued and measured according to the physical labor they can do, as opposed to the intellectual work and cultivation that they engage in. That's an old thing from slavery, even though Africans have the longest intellectual and scholarly history of any other culture or race of people within the historical record. So intellectualism, I mean, I think above all, revolution is an intellectual endeavor, because you could shoot all the guns in the world, but if you cannot articulate your positions in a way that can be digested and accepted and embraced by the masses of your people, then what happens is, if you win your so-called revolution, you're just going to have to become a dictator, because the people don't have the intellectual capacity to comprehend the changes that you're implementing. And we've seen that from Zimbabwe to even parts of China. So we need a cultural revolution, and we need to become, again, an intellectual people. We always understand the material things that we lost as an African people. And when we think of culture, we think of the art, we think of the clothing, we think of the music and the food, but we rarely think of African intellectual culture. And that pains me. I get a lot of people that want to, when I'm trying to engage in discourse and discussion and analysis, they ask me, well, what do we do? And we're all about that work. And what's really weird to me is, wherever the Black people who are doing all the work are, I would never go to them and say, hey, y'all sit down and let's engage into some discussion. I don't know where the workers are finding time to come to the talkers and tell us to start work, because the talkers don't go to the workers and say, stop working and start talking. I mean, I figure if I was doing all that work and I was all about the work, how do you even get time to read the talking or engage in the dialogue? Let alone tell us. I don't kick down the doors of the churches and say, stop praising the Lord. I mean, like, you have place, go do the work. I call them guys the Action Jacksons. But we all know action, when you engage, if you don't have the proper ideological foundation for your actions, even if your heart is in the right place, you're going to end up with demagogues and cults and maladaptations to your oppression. So I think we have to re-intellectualize our struggle. And there was a time in the construction era where academic achievement and literacy was one of the highest values and standards in our community, and African people had created the most rapid and expansive literacy program, where we went from at the end of the Civil War having an over 90% illiteracy rate to within halfway through Reconstruction having a higher literacy rate amongst Black people than the white people of the South. We surpassed white people in literacy, because we used to be, as they think, as the myth about the model minority Asians, we used to be the minority of America that valued education above all. That's something we lost. It ain't even something we lost. It was something that was systematically stripped away from us, and we need to reclaim it. I don't know. I think I might got off your point.
No, that's good. And you actually clarify a point that we might have to get in later. But before Safa asks his next question, make sure that you get your questions in from YouTube or Facebook. Hit the share button so we can create more people into the dialogue. But go ahead, Asafo. You're on mute though. See, they destroy our intellectual lives.
The mute monster got me. Okay. So if you could, brother, explain to us the nature of class antagonisms within the Black community.
I used to say I was wrong, but you know, I give myself some passes. I'm wrong about this, but it just sounds so good that I say it anyway. So you know, if y'all can let the ministers have standing in our community saying inaccurate shit all the time, I'm going to have something that I say. This is what I used to say: there is no hierarchy amongst slaves. Before you can establish hierarchies, true hierarchies, you must first be liberated. Because if you are under the state of oppression, or we were really enslaved, according to Dr. Bobby E. Wright, slavery is the state where all of your life-sustaining resources and institutions are under the control of another people. That's what slavery is, according to Dr. Wright. So, you know, all this other stuff, being able to vote or engage in negotiations or stand, as white folks say, that Black people can now sue white people in court. You know, we can have our standing in court, and we have our citizenship through the 14th and 13th Amendment. Then we're no longer slaves. But there was never a time where the resources were given back to us that were stolen, or reparations. So, but anyway, so that's what I used to like to say, because there's really no point in Black people arguing about, well, who we are internally, because our ultimate classification is that you're oppressed. Whether you got a Bentley or I'm on a bicycle, we're all under white hegemony. So what the fuck are we arguing about? You know. But, you know, there's no denying that there are some serious stratifications within the Black community, you know. But, and there's also this new in the post, what do you call it, in the post-civil rights era, there was a time where people like Sammy Davis Jr., who was the megastar of the late Jim Crow era, when he would come to Missouri, he couldn't stay at the Hilton. He would have to go to, you know, Mama Bowie's house, and Mama Bowie had a nice little mansion. She was, you know, the established Black woman who brought in suitors. Even James Brown in his early days. So when entertainers would come to the major cities to perform, they would have to eat in the Black community under Jim Crow. They would have to lodge in the Black community under Jim Crow. There couldn't be no white man driving a Negro around, so they'd have to get car service from the Black community. So even if you was the ballingest, flossiest Black person, the most celebrated entertainers in that Jim Crow era, you still had an organic relationship to the Black community, and you still had dependency on the Black community. And if you did something to offend the Black community or to be ousted by the Black community, you were extremely vulnerable. Now, you can get to a certain level of economic independence, which there's no such thing, but let's do some more pretending, that where you don't have to see another Black person. You can completely sever your connection to the Black community and still function. And if you are so dead and sick inside, if you can be cut off from your people and still thrive, you know, that's on you. But I know, like, there's still little lessons that these Negroes have to learn. Like, I was reading this article about Oprah Winfrey lived in this elite gated community and how they would harass and do little microaggressions against her in that community, or how Dr. Dre was involved in a minor traffic accident with one of his wealthy white neighbors, and the cops came and slammed him on the hood of his car. Or we'll hear about some celebrity going into the Geechee store to drop 100 G's, and then, you know, when the white people come and spend money, they have an escort to carry their things out to the car. Like we just had a wealthy rapper by the name of FBG Duck, who went to the Gold Coast and spent tens of thousands of dollars in these luxury stores, and his location was leaked. and there were some people there to murder him. And he went to the Geechee store and said, "Can I go out the back?" Now, it is the practice of that a lot of celebrities and prominent people come to the Gold Coast to shop. And a lot of prominent people live there, like Oprah Winfrey, I think, still has a mansion or a penthouse on the Gold Coast. And he asked, like all other celebrities said, "May I exit through the back where you let the elites go?" And they said, "No, go out the front." And he walked out the front and was murdered. So even the wealthy blacks are reminded of you can't buy your way out of oppression and dehumanization. So what I have to say is the problem is not so much that white people will say, well, this is a rich black or this is one of our accepted. The problem is internally that we believe that there is no hierarchy. We believe that there is an economic or an individual solution to this political collective problem. So the illusions that it creates for us, the wealthy blacks today play the same role that the house slave played during chattel slavery. They give us the illusion of opportunity and elevation while legitimizing the system as well. Say there are rewards to be had in this system if you comply with the system. You too can get this rewards. But just like the house slave, a large plantation, a plantation master and mistress might only need a dozen or so house attendants, where they could have more than 1,500 field slaves. So those coveted spots are limited, and if every field slave on the plantation obeyed themselves and followed the rules, they still wouldn't get there. And that's a real shame. I remember, I think it was David Letterman asked Jay-Z about his the key to success, and I just really wish that one wealthy black person, when they're asked that question, because Jay-Z said, well, it's about my believing in myself, me refusing to give up, sleepless nights and long 18-hour days. And he told all this bullshit about why he's successful. And if Jay-Z had sat there and said, first of all, if you want to be successful, first thing you need is luck above talent and everything else. Secondly, you need to find a need or a desire or an interest of the white elites that you can serve. That's the key to wealth and success. And you cannot find a wealthy, rich, balling ass black person who is not filling a niche or an agenda, serving the agenda, or addressing a want or desire of the white elites. That's the only path to wealth under white domination. But I also say, look, white people, everywhere they went, they didn't go anywhere and join someone's economic system and raise up through the ranks of someone else's economic system. They didn't go to what we now call Ghana or South Africa or Liberia and say, hey, what's you guys' economic system? Because I'm going to learn it and I'm going to master it and I'm going to outcompete you. They didn't come to the Iroquois, to the Choctaws, to the Cherokees and say, what is the Cherokee economic system? Buffalo? All right, I'm going to become the best buffalo hunter and collect more hides than the hunting season and become the best trapper and trader. And I'm going to take over by mastering your economic system. What they did was wipe the table. Whether it's a chessboard, whatever analogy you like, we playing chess, they playing chess, whatever the board was, white people flipped the board over and said, here's the new terms and conditions. Here are the new standards. And so that's what black people do, say, well, how do we want to define wealth? I prioritize the extraction, refinement, processing, and distribution of resources. How do we want to do that? And then we flip the table and do that. But in terms of stratification, I like the idea that there's no hierarchy amongst slaves. And if you want to say, well, I want wealth, I want comfort, because black wealth is a ransom. Black wealth is a ransom you pay to shield yourself from the worst ravages of oppression. That's what black wealth is. That's what it has been since we've come under oppression. And if that's what you want to do, say, hey, I want individual comfort over collective empowerment, that's your right to do. But just stop fucking lying to the masses of people about who you are and what you represent to yourself and to us. Because there is no hierarchy amongst slaves. Until the systems and institutions of global white domination and white hegemony have been removed from African lands and from the necks of African people, there's really no hierarchy. There are different roles within the white man's system, and I'm not willing to bicker about different roles and what role any other black person plays under this system. I only want to debate and discuss how the different roles in subverting, challenging, and dismantling this system.
Let me double down on that. I want to stay there for a second. So, you deliver, and I think some of us be accused of this all the time, but a black person hears you being hard or critiquing black folks, the Jay-Z's, the Oprahs, or the homeboy in the hood teaching financial literacy or whatever. And we have this rhetoric of race first and class, but you got to add class and on code. We have all these other things.
Race first, yeah.
Right. So I want you to answer two questions. One, what's your thoughts when people say you always critique black people, like we should be on code or whatever? And then also, I want you to tell me which one do you confront? Like which one is more important, or how you distinguish who you confront? Actually, I just want you to answer that question, and I'll follow up if I need to. But
wait, the first question was, I didn't quite get the.
So pretty much when we talk about Oprah and we critique the celebrities and the black leading people who getting all the news coverage or whatever, we critiquing them, and black people are like y'all always hating on them, or go get that energy to the white man as opposed to attacking or critiquing black power. What is your thoughts when you hear this to people who want you to be, more friendly and accepting to these people? And actually, I want to ask the second question too. The second question is, are you calling them enemies because they run an enemy ideology, or people who just need to be woken up? So two questions.
So first of all, it's funny because when I did the Bro Diallo broadcast today, someone came in there and says that I'm attacking white people and I'm always blaming white people. So I don't know. It just depends on what day you catch me on, because I get accused of focusing on white people too much, and not focusing on black people enough. And then I get accused of only attacking black people and never attacking white folks.
It's whichever argument is the most convenient at the time.
Exactly. So, but I'd like to think, and I don't know if I ever did an audit or a tally of all my hateration. I would like to imagine that the majority of my hateration goes to white folks. But I mean, if it said most of my hateration goes to black elites, I wouldn't be able to deny it. But what I would respond to say that I attack these people is that, they attack us first. I don't talk about like Ice Cube. Until Ice Cube Ice Cube is a minstrel. And I think Ice Cube is a race traitor and a minstrel for various reasons. But brothers like Keidi Obiawadu, Dale Jones, there have been even the late Dr. Khalil Muhammad. They all already broke down and critiqued and told us about Ice Cube. You notice I started going in on Ice Cube, and it's not when Ice Cube acts a fool. I don't even care when these elites act a fool. I am a black man who's a member of the poor and working class masses. That's lateral. Those are the people that I am among. That's my class. That's my status. Those are the people I seek to enlighten and organize. So I only start to critique these people is when they start, use social media language, trending in amongst the consciousness of the rest of us. When they start trending amongst the conscious of the rest of us. So I haven't said much about Oprah because Oprah's just been, doing her shit, but she's been over there with the white folks and ain't really been bothering us too much. But when Ice Cube steps up and says he has a plan for Black America, then I'm Black America. So I'm going to critique that. So I don't mess with them until they mess with us. I don't say shit about them until they put themselves in a position they belong in. So I ain't said nothing to say about Trick Daddy. When Trick Daddy came out with the Booty Eating Club, I didn't write a critique. I didn't talk about it. I'm like, that's Trick Daddy do the Booty Eating Club. But if Trick Daddy said Booty Eating Club is going to empower the Black community, or booty eating is nutritious for the health of the Black masses and will help us overcome diabetes and high blood pressure, then I will start to say, whoa, Trick Daddy. And then I'm going to have to critique and dissect what Trick Daddy is selling to us. That's all. So I had nothing to say about LeBron James. I could give two fucks about ball chasing and ball chasers. But when he goes and opens a school and says, well, this is the formula, and I'm doing something on behalf of the poor and working class black people. I am creating a structure, and I'm creating a plan for it, and I'm training leaders of the future. And then I have to say, well, let me look at the school. Let me look at the curriculum. Let me look at the physical structure. Let me check out who the administrator is. Let me check out where the money is coming from, because these celebrities never put up their own money. They put up their name. Like Jay-Z, the most honest thing he ever said was, my presence is charity. You know, and we didn't really run with that. We didn't really take that. And when he told us, he said the quiet part out loud. So I only go at these rich blacks when they come at us. I'm defending my class. So when they start to try to penetrate my class, speak on behalf of us, or improperly influence us or deceive us, then I don't try to talk to the celebrity. Somebody said, you know, you should talk to Ice Cube. You know, like Ice-T just came out and said some shit about black violence. I love Ice-T. I'm not even going, I got to stop talking because I'm about to start spitting Ice-T lyrics. Rhyme Pays is one of my favorite albums. But when he came out and said that shit, I had to tell Ice-T, shut the fuck up. You don't know what the fuck you talking about. You know, go lay up with that silicone doll you married and leave us alone. Like Dr. Clark said, if you go over there, stay over there. And if you go over there, hey, that's on you. But don't try to go over there and put a toe back in the hood or put a toe back in our struggles. Don't try to speak to our suffering when you're profiting from our suffering. So that's what I would say. I don't fuck with the celebrities unless they fuck with my people, my class, my social strata. When rich black folks are doing rich black folks weird shit, I don't have shit to say about them. But Dave Chappelle come out and on the special, and I see black people, even activists in the community, Dave Chappelle's the GOAT. Dave Chappelle, I'm like, wow, Dave Chappelle has entered the consciousness of the black masses. So I got to hit my people, the people that I can reach, use what little platform I have to tell the people, yo, Dave Chappelle ain't down for us. And here's the reason why. These are the problems with what Dave Chappelle's asserting. And then I have to talk about black people like it's just jokes. And I'm like, no, black people have been violently assaulted by jokes. And there have been whole published books called Nigger Jokes. You know, when Al Jolson got up and said, Mammy, hey, it's just a joke. No, jokes are very damaging. And then I even had to go and talk about how the Nazis use humor and art to dehumanize the Slavs and the Jews and other populations. So I only talk about them rich niggas when they come messing with us. If they stay doing rich black folk stuff, you know, when Will Smith is posting pictures of himself in Dubai, I don't care. But when Will Smith is telling inspirational quotes, telling the rest of the black masses how we can succeed, and I know his path to success is suicidal, it's mass collective suicide if we all embrace that, I got to call it out. So you tell the celebrities that have no organic connection or relationship to the black community to leave us alone. And I swear to you, I don't say their names. Just go form booty eating clubs like what's that? Like Trick Daddy. And I swear to you, I will not judge you.
So we're gonna take a quick detour, really quick.
Right.
In the comments,
I hope somebody don't go Google me and see if I said anything about the booty eating club. I don't recall commenting on it. I don't believe that I have, but you know, people love to go and Google my name and booty eating, and so oh, you did say something about Trick Daddy.
They're gonna fact check whether or not.
Yeah,
you
but I don't believe. I'm going to stand by. I didn't until you find out that I did, and then I'll have an explanation for that too.
Okay. So someone asked, Shan Shableek Richardson asked, what about Boyce Watkins? So
he's a grifter.
Yeah, this brings up a larger question regarding the gurus, the internet celebrities, the self-appointed black influencers that tell us, well, the way you're going to be able to, build black wealth or, achieve black liberation or whatever is by, saving your money and investing and all this other nonsense. So what about Boyce Watkins, Brother Diallo? What about Boyce Watkins? What about Jay Morrison? What about these other as you call them, grifters?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, he's a multi-level revolutionary, multi-level marketer. He's a Ponzi schemer. I mean, and he's been so exposed. That's why I love when him and Yvette went at each other's throats, because they were both right. And I just think it's so disgusting when you've been working with somebody for years, but you only tell their dirt when you have a rift with them. So you're not telling their dirt to protect the Black community from their corruption and deception. You're telling the dirt for vengeance, which is corrupt unto itself. So if I've been working with like brother Chauncey for years. He and I work, organize together, strategize together, and then me and him fall out. He eats all my vegan peanut butter cups, and I come out like, let me tell y'all about Chauncey. He ain't real. And then Chauncey jumps online and be like, let me tell you about bro Diallo. He ain't real. Then we ain't doing this for y'all. We are hustlers. Because, I mean, let me tell you something. Let me just say, I will Tekashi your ass tomorrow. I'm the revolutionary Tekashi. Because if I know you're doing some slick, dirty, behind-the-scenes shit, even if you my boy, I might give you 48 hours to tell on yourself. If I find out you're doing some dirt, I'm like, yo, is this true? I support the new Negro self-exposure protocol. I believe in self-exposure. But if you don't self-expose, then I'm going to tell. So if you try to do revolution with me and I know you the scum of the earth, I will give you 24 hours to tell, and I'm not going to wait to fall out with you to tell. So anyway, he's a grifter. He's not even financially independent or literate. But this is what people like him do. You have the dominant society and the dominant conditioning. So our oppressors who control the media infrastructure, the educational infrastructure, who have been indoctrinating and manipulating Black people for generations, have some fundamental things that they impose on us as a collective. So if I want to be a Black leader or a Black voice, I can look at what white folks have done to Black people, and I can simply piggyback on that conditioning. Or those are people who work off. Black people are primed to accept certain things as normal or acceptable or aspirational. So if I want to be a Black leader, I know Black people are primed to be religious. So I can adopt some religious rhetoric and tweak it a little bit. Tell my choir to wear some red, black, and green choir robes, and I put on a kente cloth robe. And instead of the white Jesus, I put up a Black Jesus. So basically, I'm putting a African cover on European conditioning. So it's the same thing that these financial gurus do. Black people, white folks, and their media and marketing infrastructure literally spend billions of dollars to get Black people, to develop Black people's desires and drives to consume and to get the best material possessions that this system has to offer as validations of ourselves. So all I do is go from capitalist mass indoctrination, consumer indoctrination, and I call it Black economic literacy. But this is also the same thing that the religious people does. He could have done the exact same thing, and you replace God with finance, and he's nothing but a pork chop preacher. He is engaged in what is called prosperity politics. The ministers used to say, you engage in religion so that you can have an afterlife, so you can strive towards this unseen place. You can go to this place that's all but unattainable, but you can do it. They went from saying that to say, if you follow God, you'll get a Bentley. So politics used to be something about empowerment. Our political leaders used to say, I will give you humanity. I will stop the atrocities. I'll stop the Klan. I'll stop the paddle rollers. If you ain't vote for me, if you follow me politically as your leader, I will get you to this promised land. And now in prosperity politics, they say, if you're properly pro-Black, if you engage in the proper pro-Black behaviors, you will get a Bentley. So prosperity politics emerged. That's what ADOS, FBA, all that shit is nothing but, and this financial, it's prosperity politics. It went from engaging in politics for collective empowerment and collective liberation to engaging in politics for personal wealth and personal enrichment. That's it. It's the same old hustle. It's so common. I always say, I wish Black people would at least develop enough to force grifters to get more complex. And after prosperity politics erodes and collapses on to itself, they're either going to come back with more prosperity gospel and religion, or go on to some other grift. And a lot of times they interchange, you know. And as soon as he fully runs out of steam on this financial shit, I promise you, Boyce Watkins is going to find God, and the God's going to tell him to spread his word. And just like a lot of preachers became financial gurus, and a lot of financial gurus are about to become preacher in the next 5 to 10 years. Watch. I want one of y'all to text me or hashtag Bro Diallo when you post the article that find out that Boyce Watkins is going to start a church. You know,
you ain't tell me you was a prophet. I know them preachers rubbing off on you.
Yeah, I'm a secular prophet. I said that. I'm a secular prophet. I don't use divine wisdom to predict the future. I just use historical precedent to predict the future.
So tell me this. I've been doing some Claudia Jones study lately, and see how her family was in Trinidad, and they were, you know, middle class Trinidadians, so they was building generational wealth. And then the U.S. With the cocoa industry pretty much ruined that and impoverished the country. They was forced to move. But her mother died at a young age, and she understood, you know, she connected her struggle with the struggle of the millions of African people, and she committed class suicide at a very young age. Right. My question is, do you think we should give up on adults, right? And what kind of focus should we be putting on young people to kind of pull them away from individualism and this other shit, that generational wealth and stuff like that? What can we do to pull them away? And again, do you think we should give up on adults?
I think Whitney Houston was the most incredible artist. I mean, I'm not even into singing and R&B. You know, I'm a hip hop, roots, reggae, Afrobeat. You know, I have very limited taste in music. But even when I hear Whitney, it blows my mind. But the worst thing Whitney ever did is that line, "I believe the children are the future." The children are not the future. The children are not the future. Because guess what? By the time the future gets here, what are the children? They're the adults. And I know this concept is saying, well, you can teach the children. And when the children become adults, that's not how shit works. We cannot say, well, forget about the adults and focus on the children. It does not work, and it doesn't make any sense. This has to be multi-generational and intergenerational. Now, the techniques for educating adults or reorienting adults are different. So we could say, well, we need different tactics for adult education. In fact, my wife, who's a college professor, she is literally an expert in adult education. You know, she teaches people to educate adults. She teaches university classes in adult education, because adults who everything from their life experience to their brain chemistry are still capable of learning. They just learn differently. And if you have a bunch of dumbass adults, and for every child you reach out to educate, for every conscious adult that a child interacts with, and then they go home to dumbass parents and dumbass aunties and dumbass school crossing guards and dumbass security guards, they're going to have more impact on that child than you. We have to make allies of other adults. We can't just, that is a conclusion of convenience, because I know how hard it is trying to talk to grown folks. But it is not a viable conclusion. We can't leave in it. We have to incorporate the elders, the middle-aged, the teenagers. I got a 19-year-old. I mean, if we could just cut out the teens and then do the children and the elders, shit. You talking about the youth, man, to what age? So, no, I don't buy into that. I think that we have to do intergenerational education, and we have to develop techniques and then not only do you have different techniques for educating adults, it's different. The hardest adult to educate is an educated adult. You know, my wife teaches undergrad, master's, and PhD students. And the hardest students she has the most trouble educating are the ones who are on their way to securing their PhDs. So I don't believe in focusing on the youth. I think that is a losing strategy, and I don't think it's a strategy that has ever been successful in any liberation or justice struggle. And even if you read, there's so many examples, like Che Guevara, when he went into the Congo and he talked about how the elders how one of the best guerrilla fighters he had was like a 70-year-old man who was born into colonization and lived his whole life into colonization, and he was radicalized, became a card carrying communist, and then later became a guerrilla soldier, in the muck and the mire in his 70s. So I think that it has to be all of us or none of us.
Okay. All right, so before Asafo get to his next question, we're going to extend it a little bit more. When we have Reverend Dr. Diallo here, we're going to go a little bit past the hour. So make sure you get the questions in from YouTube and Facebook. Go ahead, Asafo. Mute. Oh.
Got me again. Okay, can you pull up the Amos Wilson quote?
Absolutely. Right after that, we're going to go for you to critique a video, a short clip. Where we'll go to Amos and then we'll go to that short clip.
Y'all don't put me up against Amos Wilson. That ain't fair. Y'all didn't prepare me.
Listen, people don't try to snipe Jarrett for giving some kind Amos. So we going to get you got too.
Man, come on. This is ambush journalism.
Not bad, man. We love you, though. That's all that matters.
All right.
Oh, here, this is the whole thing right here. Oh, can y'all see that? All right.
So I'm gonna read this. Hopefully, those who are listening, those who are looking, will be able to see what's on the screen there. But I'll read it to you. We have to recognize that the educated individual is the craziest of all individuals, that the educated individual is the most dangerous of all individuals. When this world comes to its end, it will not be brought to an end by the muggers on the streets. It will not be brought to an end by the drug addicts, by the prostitutes, by the youth gangs. It's going to be brought to an end by people with PhD degrees. It's going to be brought to an end by people who studied physics and mathematics, people who spent 15 and 20 and 30 years in school. It's going to be brought to an end by people who live in nice clip lawns with houses on the corner, with neat hedges, 2-car garages, and nice little well-spoken children. And the people who send their children to private school. And one morning they'll go off to work and give their wives a nice little bourgeois kiss, and they'll go and sit in front of their console of their computer, then proceed to blow themselves up along with the rest of the world. What kind of education is it that leads to these kinds of people? These people are being educated into madness.
Yeah.
So what I want from you, Brother Diallo, is just to respond to that quote, kind of like a Rorschach. Whatever comes to mind when you hear that.
It's absolutely accurate. I actually had read that quote when I was beginning my undergraduate formal education. And my wife, when she was in school, she used to say she would write in the margins, "Don't educate yourself out of your mind." But I would say that just in a semantic position, that education is different than training, as Dr. Bobby E. Wright said, because Bobby E. Wright encouraged Black people to get formal education, or what he would call training. He said that training puts you in a position and gives you the skill and the understanding to perform a task. But he said education, which means to bring out. The word educate means to bring out what's innately there. To train someone means to input. So he said that we can get training from white institutions, but our education must come from our community. And that I always say a revolutionary indoctrination is more important than a formal education, because it bothers me that every spring, in a couple of months, you're about to see Black people will be sharing all over social media these links of a 14-year-old Black child that graduated at the top of their class at 12, 14, math genius, and they're going to Harvard, they're going to MIT. But you never see articles about how they came out. You only see the articles about when they went in, these little Black geniuses. And I don't know of any other population that takes their best and brightest and puts them into the institutions of their enemies. And even if your child must go into the institution of your enemies, every Black person, every Black child should not be able to reach their even adolescence without a full-on African education of understanding who we are, what our position is in this society, and what our trajectory, agendas, and ultimate outcomes that we want for ourselves should be. So you can't depend on education alone, or what is called really training or mass indoctrination. So Bobby, you right, encourage us to go to school to get skills, and not just, to be a plumber or a technician, or you can also be having philosophy, critical analysis, knowing how to write a coherent paragraph and sentence. Those are skills, intellectual and labor skills. But at the core of everything must be the ideology. I don't care about those little kids unless I know those little kids have a Pan-African ideology. It blew my mind how Black people were celebrating Hidden Figures. To me, that was one of the most tragic movies, and it literally frightened me. How Black people were like, "Oh, Hidden Colors." It was a Black woman that put the white man on the moon and put those satellites up in the sky. It blew my mind that we couldn't see past, like, this is tragic. That woman had no business doing that shit. That was a misappropriation. And we understand when people rob us of our material resources. We even understand it when they culture vultures. But the greatest theft they take from us is our intellectual brain drain, stealing our intellect, our creativity, our brilliance. And I never even hear people complain about it. In fact, when we see blaring examples of white people robbing us intellectually, co-opting our intellect, remobilizing our intellect to service their agendas, we celebrate that shit. It blows my mind. So I agree with Amos Wilson on everything he said. But I think I still encourage Black people to get formal schooling and formal education, but without a Pan-African ideology, it is a threat to us more than an asset. There used to be these T-shirts Black people wore in the in the 90s called, they had a symbol called danger, educated Black man, danger, educated white woman. And the way Black people interpreted that was that educated Black man is somehow a threat to the system. But those danger, I always interpret as that this person is a threat to us. So he's absolutely right. I think the way to avoid that is ideological training, ideological cultivation, combined with formal education is the way to negate that. But it's a losing sum. I would prefer, that we not go into their institutions at all. I think like the universities have admissions test. I think African people, we need to start giving our own admissions test. Like, I'm not going to send my child to school unless they have the grounding to understand what they're learning. And even my wife, who is a conscious Pan-African revolutionary Black woman, would have to, come home and deconstruct and reconstruct her lessons and her scholarship. So
if I could real quick, Geechee, you mentioned just a real quick point. It's interesting that you mentioned Hidden Colors. I'd read, you mentioned Chalmers Johnson at the beginning of our conversation. I'd read his book Nemesis, The Last Days of the American Republic, and I have it on the bookshelf right now. And he talks about, I would always recommend that people, before getting to, when Hidden Colors came out, I would tell people Hidden Figures. When Hidden Figures came out, I would tell people, please go read his chapter on how the American empire is trying to expand into space and how they're trying to weaponize space and put weapons up there that they can use against terrestrial targets. Please read that before you start celebrating Black women putting white people and the American empire out in space.
Yeah.
I
I went off on that, and then they started talking about STEM education, and this is going to encourage Black girls to get into STEM. And I got people just jumped down my throat. They were pissed that I was called misogynistic. I was called a hotep, and all Black women, Black girl joy, I don't want to see Black women have joy. And I'm like, I don't want Black women in the basement of the Pentagon, and then where are the patents? Where are the copyrights and the patents on that work? It don't come back. So we didn't even get paid, It's like, Yeah, that to me that shouldn't have been anything we celebrate. The fact that they can get us to celebrate tragedies means we got a lot of work to do.
A black woman making a bomb to blow up black girls on another continent. It's rough.
Yeah.
I want you to respond to this. I want you to respond to this news clip. Report on the news.
For years, every day was a struggle for Carletta Johnson.
Just being a single parent with no help. That was really, really hard.
Even harder with no car, little family support, and only a part-time job, which also meant for her no health care. She was relying on government-subsidized housing and food stamps to feed her 3 children. As for her paycheck,
it was no more than $600 every 2 weeks.
That's every 2 weeks for you and your children.
Right.
And some days,
I was sitting in the parking lot, I was just crying. And I'm like, okay, get yourself together.
But it was all she knew, raised by a single mother herself, forced to grow up fast to help care for her 5 siblings. More than 1,000 miles away in Phoenix, Arizona, Jonia Coleman has a similar story.
I grew up in a single-parent household with my mom, and I had 7 other siblings. My mom was on government assistance for a while to be able to help feed us.
This is generational poverty.
People are often born into poverty, and it's been poverty that their mother, their grandmother, etc. has experienced.
For a family of 4, it's defined as making less than $26,000 a year. More than 38 million Americans live in poverty. For Black Americans, it's 1 in every 5, higher than Latinos, Asian Americans, and more than double the rate of white Americans. And it spills into all aspects of life. More chronic health issues, higher rates of divorce, and abuse or neglect. Climbing out can seem nearly impossible. It often requires a new job or a degree, much harder with fewer resources like transportation and childcare. That was Jonia's reality until 2 years ago, thanks to Live and Learn, where she gained support, new mentors, and a new mindset.
They're trying to help me with my credit, all type of things that they offered to me to get myself back in order.
Having somebody that makes you feel safe, having a cheerleader, having an advocate, having somebody that is by your side no matter what happens.
Back in Atlanta, Carletta is also defying the odds, recently moving into her own home for the very first time. She got her certification and became a teacher, now with big hopes for her own children.
My dreams for them is for them to grow up and just live a life. Don't have to worry about things that I had to worry about as a child.
Hoping she is the one to finally break the cycle. Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Atlanta.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click.
I got a little impressed, but go ahead.
What do you want? Well,
go ahead.
I think Black people have to ask ourselves a question. Are we poor due to oppression, or are we pressed because we're poor? I think when we answer that question accurately, that will put a lot of that other stuff into perspective, proper perspective, and I mean, that's that. And like I said, they love shuffling the cards, okay, I was poor, now I'm rich, now I'm rich and I'm poor. There was also a report that I think would balance that to show that Black people, when they do reach middle class or greater status, it doesn't last more than a full generation. So even if you work your way out, you go right back in. Our poverty is a byproduct of our oppression. So if you're really anti-poverty and you're not fighting systemic oppression, you're just part of the cycle, the exploitation cycle. And for every Black you pull up out of poverty, there's going to be 1,000 more that fall right back into it. So we got to get rid of our overall vulnerability. Now, I'm not against that woman taking steps. I relate to that. I was a child of a single mother, and my grandmother raised 6 kids. And I had to go all the way back to my great grandma Bowie and grandpa Bowie to see an intact family. And like I said, my grandmother raised 6 children, including my mother, as a single mother. And then my mother raised us as a single mother. But all of my mother's children, me, my brother, and my sister, we're all, married and stable 2 couples. And my brother and I both have advanced degrees. My sister has training as a beautician and she has like the beautician license that allows her to open a school and train other beauticians. So we made it out. Oh Lord, so, but we're just as vulnerable, maybe even more vulnerable than my mother was and my grandmother was, because at the same time we clawed ourselves up and pulled ourselves up, which is a myth. I'm just using that facetiously. We haven't been able to construct the family bonds and the interdependency and cooperation and support that I had growing up, So there's things you gain, you can pay your bills on time, higher credit rating, and maybe your car is paid off, but those larger communal emotional supports. And I even know young people that are children of millionaires, and they're having to get the psychological supports for everything from depression. I know some Black youth that go to some of the most elite schools. Their parents put them in the most elite schools, and they call and tell me, "Oh, my child is suicidal, bro, Diallo. My child is this and that." So you trade one problem for the other. But I have no issue with Black people, like sister becoming a teacher, but it disturbed me that after being in poverty and having generations of poverty and finally becoming a homeowner and raising up 3 children, and I just want them to live life, instead of saying, hey, I want them to grow up and be educated and make sure that our people, there's no collective obligation, there's no collective struggle, there's no collectivism in that. So she's on par to become a class traitor or whatever else. So I think that's unfortunate that it doesn't seem that she really took anything of lasting value from her in poverty, from sitting out crying and struggling to feed your children. And you have no critique of the systems that brought you to that condition. There's no analysis. I mean, she went to college and got a college degree to become a teacher. I think you have to have a master's degree or a teaching certificate at the least, and didn't learn any type of class or systems analysis to understand poverty. So, I mean, we were winners and losers at the same time. I'm happy that family made it out of poverty if they did, but the poverty of ideology or collective poverty can't be solved without collective action.
I'll just say, because that's actually my first time seeing that clip as well, and I'll just say that we're constantly it's a seductive form of propaganda. We have to understand that this is ABC News that we're talking about. So extremely seductive form of perseverance pornography, wherein we're being told, oh, well, it's, this program, we're always, we're not talking about actual widespread policy. We're not talking about the gulf between the haves and the have-nots and the overwhelming upward transfer of resources and money that has caused a lot of this poverty, in general, widespread. We're just talking about mindsets. And this great little, nonprofit program helped this lady see, that she had, a bad mindset. And when they helped her change her mindset, everything switched, turned around, and she was able to, make it out. So the message is, oh, don't critique capitalism. Don't critique the system of white supremacy. Don't critique. No, just change your mindset and everything will be fine. Change your mindset and, expand your network and you'll be fine. So, I mean, that is precisely the type of message that ABC News would put out.
Yeah. And I think that we never asked the question. We loved showing these comparisons between white wealth and Black wealth, white households, when Black people have twice the poverty rate. I never hear anyone ask the question, how did white people get rich? I think they assume that through saving and being prudent economic practices, economic literacy. I mean, do you talk? Have you ever seen Trump? Have you ever talked to a white person? You really think, white people became wealthy through carnage and pillage. And they sustained their wealth through carnage and pillage. Mm-hmm. Not literacy or anything else. How many economic disruptions? They have to come up with new words for shit. It's a depression. It's downflation. They had to literally invent hyperflation. They invented words out of nothing to describe how fucking dysfunctional their economic practices are. Not to talk about like the Great Dust Bowl and the fucking Exxon Valdez spill, or the pipeline bursting in the Gulf of Mexico that literally caused an incalculable level of ecological destruction, where there isn't enough money in existence to pay for those damages. So their money is fiction. Money it is fiction, and they are rich because they engage in perpetual pillage and carnage. And any source of white wealth that you look at, whether it's an individual wealthy family or a wealthy system society, I don't care if, and we love talking about the Bernie Sanders loves to throw up the Scandinavian countries in our faces. Mm-hmm. But if you peel back one layer of their history books, pillage and carnage. So unless somebody's out here saying, Black people, I want y'all to pillage and carnage, they're not truly interested in us, any significant, statistically relevant amount of Black people clawing our way out of poverty. Poverty ain't got shit to do with money. I mean, we got Africans from Haiti. When the French were colonizing Haiti, it was the wealthiest colony in the world. We got Africans sitting on bauxite and coltan, gold and diamonds, and living in abject poverty. Poverty has not a damn thing to do with the resources, the wealth, or fiat currency. It has everything to do with power. We are poor because we are oppressed. If you are not dismantling the systems and institutions of oppression, you're not honestly concerned with correcting poverty. You're trying to exploit the poor. So I appreciate that, because, yeah, it is propaganda too, but I thought we would just take it at face value because, you know.
Let's get back to drowning these rich people with our collective spit. How about that? What's your thoughts and suggestions on, or as it pertains to organizing workers versus students? Should we be focusing more on the workers, on the students? I know you kind of answered this with the youth and the adults, but how? Go ahead.
There has to be an alliance. There must have to be a multifaceted attack. You know, our oppressors don't say, well, who should we propagandize and exploit? The youth or the old people? Who should we exploit and propagandize? The old or the young, or the students or the workers? They do multifaceted attacks. So every Black, you know, even now I'm talking to my son, and he's in his first semester of his first year of college, and he's checking out the student union, whether he should join the student union and build from within the student union, or whether he should start a whole separate body or group within the students. So wherever we find ourselves. But I do think it is appropriate for workers to organize and have leadership from within their milieu or within their ecosystem to cultivate that, and students for within there. And then there should be cross-pollination and cooperation from there. So I think that it should be multifaceted. All groups, every element of African culture must be radicalized. Every element of African culture must be radicalized, or we will become extinct. You know, so there is no place we don't have. I'm like, man, hey, we can forget about the workers. Hell, we can forget about the old people. Let's just focus on the students in the schools. I'm really good, man. You should see me take a standardized test. I'm so fucking good at school. If this was just about school, I'd be like, yay, you know, yeah, I could do that. That's where I'm comfortable, you know, just reading and writing and typing papers. You know, I used to see me sit here and just type out a political science essay. If it was just an educational thing, I wish it was. I wish I could just be over there and do it. But you have to go to every element, all areas, all social relations or human interactions. Dr. Neely Fuller talked about the 7 areas of human interaction. I think Kitty Owadu expanded it to like 9. But, you know, education, labor, politics, sex, war, economics, all areas of human relations and interactions where our oppressors dominate and exploit us, we must radicalize and liberate simultaneously. It must be simultaneous as well. And it's hella doable, you know. It's just, you know, the desire, the will, and you know, design, conceptualize, execute.
Do I hear some advocating for some liberation theology?
Yeah, absolutely. Even though that's a contradiction, ain't no such thing. Generally, liberation theology means liberation from theology. But yeah, you'll find that most people who engage in liberation theology tend to exit the theology. You know, Malcolm X did it and Dr. King did it. They both did liberation theology, and they became more and more ostracized from the very theology they were trying to do liberation theology within. So that's a natural outcome. So if you truly liberation minded within your theology, the ultimate outcome is going to be that you're going to either exit or be expelled from your theology.
Even
Yes,
even James,
and all that to say, absolutely, I am a 100% proponent of liberation from theology.
yeah, even James Cone, who you know kind of coined Black liberation theology, you could tell in his later writings, in his later works, in his later public statements, that he was kind of, for him, religion was becoming more and more of an afterthought.
Right.
Like the idea of liberation was more of a thought on his mind than the theology aspect of it.
Right.
Yeah, so I agree with you 100%. So Geechee, you want to we have a few minutes left. You want to go through some of the questions in the comments?
Yeah. Let's do. All right, go through that.
Okay. Let's go back to the beginning here. So Lynn was impressed that you were able to draw a Tekashi 6ix9ine in Marx Association.
Yeah. Bless Tekashi's heart. Bless his heart.
Okay. So awesome. Let's see here. Let's go through this. King's be small.
And while he's searching through the questions and the feedback, make sure you get your questions in real quick. Thank y'all for tuning in, kicking it with us. So put your questions in, and we'll see if Diallo can break your question down.
White people are worthy of attack. You know, this is an interesting point. Let me ask you a question about just regarding this. Toussaint Werner's remark. Do you see any potential whatsoever or any necessity of coalitions between, say, Black liberation groups and, say, white leftist groups or what have you?
Yes, I do. I think so. I talk about all the time. The first thing white people will have to do is get over the notion that they're saving anybody but other white people. I think white people's role is to civilize and humanize their own culture. And so I do not accept white people saying, well, we're going to protect Black Lives Matter protesters, or we're going to go free Haiti, or we're going to go free Palestine. I think white people need to liberate white people. White people need to educate and humanize and civilize themselves. And so when white people embark on that endeavor, then and only then can we be allies. But if they're coming over to us, why do you have to come to where I am when you're already where you need to be? You are in the house of the enemy. You know, so if my house was, let's say, a home where the people in my home, my wife and my two sons are going out into the community, brutalizing and attacking other people in the community. And I don't like how my family, my relatives are going out into the community, brutalizing the community. When I sleep in the bed next to my wife and my sons are right down the hallway and upstairs from me, right? So I'd leave this house and go to the latest house where my wife and sons shot up and burned down. And I go into their house and be like, yeah, let's stop this. You know, that is not a person who's really interested in liberation. So white people are already right next to. The oppressors are their uncles, their aunts, their cousins, their spouses, their kinfolk. So when white people start to engage in revolutionary organization against other white people, I support them. I am a natural ally of them. We have a common goals, but we just have a different path to get there. So when white people leave the white population and come and live amongst or stand next to me, I know their goal is not liberation or revolution, because that is a losing strategy. If Black people were oppressing any other group of people, and I didn't like my people being engaged in oppression, why'd I go? You don't have to go to Haiti to liberate Haiti. Haiti's problems originate at the Congress. You know, Haiti's problems originate at the Pentagon. So why the hell are you traveling in the opposite direction of the Pentagon to help Haiti? So white folks, when white people do, I support Antifa. I support PETA. Because white folks have to experiment with animals before they work on others. So if white people need to work on animals having human rights and rights of animals before they can get to the rights of other people, I support. I don't know why black people are so mad at PETA. We don't own no industrial farms and industrial slaughterhouses. Let white people go and clip those chains and free the cows. If they get enough experimentation of freeing cows, maybe they'll turn around and learn to free themselves. So yes, I support the white left. I super support the white radical militant left. I pray bless their hearts. And I do think when they get their shit together, there can be coordination and cooperation. But that's down the line.
So
Absolutely.
while you're looking through those questions, I want you to oh my bad, I didn't mean to take that off. You can put it back. But while you're going through those questions, I want you to answer this question. So we talked about the different segments in our liberation struggle, and we know that the Black Girl Magic have a critique anytime you try to critique Black women achieving. Just like the Jewish, the Jewish. What is the thing? I'm blurting the word. What is it?
What?
Anti-Semitic. So when you think about the LGBTQ community, do you find caution in addressing or confronting people of that community who might have anti-African ideology or rhetoric?
No.
Or who have shown to be political enemies? Go ahead.
Well, what I've seen is that Black gay folks go harder against the racists in their community, the other white races. I mean, there was some prominent gay dude. I don't know, there was some prominent gay dude that said something about Marvel's coming out with his first gay superhero. And this white boy said, well, it's really tragic that the first gays, and it's the dude from Atlanta, the gangster rapper Paperboy from ATL. The TV show ATL, he plays the first openly gay superhero, and white gays started saying some off-color comments, and the Black gays went at their throats. So, I'm not an authority on their community, but they go at racists, within their cipher. I mean, here in the house and ball community here in Chicago, the black house and ball people are militant against white house and ball performers coming in and trying to appropriate and dominate. So to be honest with you, I don't have any problem critiquing a gay, straight, heterosexual, cisgendered, transgender racist. I will call them the person out for being racist. I have no issue with that, and I've never had a member from the LGBTQ plus community come at me for my critiques or attack me as being homophobic or transphobic or whatever. Never, because of my critiques and ongoing dismantling of the mainstream pride movement. I have quite a few articles on pride, and you just go to my blog and put in Diallo Kenyatta pride or LGBTQ, and I have criticism, and I never had a gay person say, how dare you talk about this person because they're gay, or because they're trans. I've never had that experience. So I think Dave Chappelle is promoting another myth to our community that, oh, you can't say anything about gay people. No, you just can't say. That's like saying you can't say anything about Black people. You can't say any racist shit about us. But if your critique is sincere and accurate, then by and large, I've never experienced that. In all of my critiques and critiquing a gay individual, because I'm not going to critique a gay individual for being gay, and I'm not critiquing the pride movement for anything other than appropriating the legitimate repression and discrimination that their people suffer and bring it in. Like one question I had asked, if the pride movement is about liberation, how come they got a day at Disney and they put the pride flag on cola cans and they invite police to paint their cars the rainbow and drive? I said, they didn't have a Black Panther Day at Disney. You know, like real liberation movements don't get a day at Disney. You know, there's never going to be a EFF, Economic Freedom Fighter, day at Disney. So this is not a real liberation movement. And the gay folks come out and be like, yeah, you're right. Whatever. Yeah, that's true. So I haven't ever experienced that. And I don't see it in other places either. Most people that get called out for critiquing the gay community is because they said some homophobic or transphobic shit that ain't got shit to do with the material reality or the politics. You know. So no, I haven't seen that. That's my thought.
So Boosie Latham, they ask what thoughts on Tariq. I presume they mean Tariq Nasheed. Is he about education or capital? I would suspect that you would kind of lump or place Tariq Nasheed in the same box as say a Boyce Watkins or Umar Johnson or someone like that. Am I correct in assuming that?
The fact that Tariq Nasheed has any status or standing in any black circles is an indictment of black people. This piece of shit said that slavery was better for black women than it was for black men because the black woman could give up some pussy and manipulate the slave master. Man, fuck that dude. And anybody that watches his movies or has anything to do with him, I mean, you're disrespecting our ancestors and you're disrespecting yourself having any level of affiliation. I don't think he's even anybody worthy of discussing. Fuck Tariq and his pimpology and all that other nonsense. I've never seen any of those goddamn Hidden Color movies or that gay erotic film that he made, you know, trying to deal with his repressed or unanswered desires or whatever the hell's going on in his sick mind. I think this dude should not be able to dwell in any black spaces. I think it is tragic and it is enraging to me that this man has any statement, judging from many of the statements. That's just one of many unacceptable things that he's said. Many. And what's going to happen is, which it confuses the hell out of me, Tariq is going to say something to run afoul of the feminist. He's going to say something to run afoul of Jewish people or the Zionists. He's going to say something to run afoul of gay people. And when he gets canceled, there are going to be a number of black people to stand up and say, well, he said all these horrible things about blacks and didn't get canceled. As if we expect those other communities, many of which are hostile to us, to have more respect for us and to protect our dignity before we do. This is one of them pieces of shit that it should have been canceled before gay, Jews, or anybody else ever heard of them. They should have already been persona non grata in our community. But then when other people say, well, we're not going to take disrespect, what are we doing? Asking other races or other communities to take the disrespect that we're willing to take? Or asking them to defend our dignity before they defend their own? Or as we fail to do so? So if anybody, I mean, I hate that dude's name come up. And I don't think his name or his physical presence should be allowed anywhere among the, it's just amazing to me that we've allowed some black men to build entire careers on disrespecting African women, our ancestors, and the overall black community. I mean, I ain't saying he is about the capital, but he shouldn't be able to get money over here. You know, he can go make minstrel films with white folks. He shouldn't be able to do anything related, but this dude is going to raise money and have a museum. That is low racial. We have low racial esteem. Our collective esteem, there's something fucking wrong there. He shouldn't be able to show his goddamn face, you know, in any place where dignified, conscious black men dwell. Fuck him.
Fuck Tariq.
Hell yeah, fuck that dude and all them shitty ass movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think it was already said. Okay, got that. Kofi Africa Akofena says he is incorrect. Homophobia doesn't exist. So what does he mean? People said homophobic shit. He is reinforcing their maladaptive tactics. He needs to read Elder Olatunji Mwamba's book. Would you like to respond?
Sure. Homophobia means an irrational fear or an irrational reaction to the existence of gay people. And we have scholars and people in our community who have said that the presence of homosexuality means the coming sign of the end times, that the homosexual movement is going to lead to internal the obliteration or a genocide of Black people and harm our reproductive rate. We had said that there's an agenda. We have people like Imalamu Baruti, who wrote a whole goddamn thick ass book. Where's that book? About homosexuality and the feminization of Black men, arguing that if we become homosexual and effeminized, we won't have the physical strength to fight off our oppressors. So homophobia is very real in all contexts of the word. There is an irrational fear and an irrational aversion to the very existence of LGBTQAI plus people. It is real. And people like to say, you know, I even used to say, oh, I ain't scared of no gay people, so I'm not homophobic. That's not what homophobic means. It doesn't mean that when a gay man steps up, you're going to throw your hands up and run in fear. It means that you are making assessments about the very existence or presence of gay people to say that they pose a threat, that they don't. And I used to be a homophobe, so I'm speaking from my own experience. And I said to the gay Black straight pride or gay straight Black pride community, I said, because my homophobia was a byproduct of coming up in the Christian church. You know, I won't go into details of it. I made a whole presentation called that I'm a victim of the gay agenda. And the fact that we, you know, when you get Black people talking about the gay agenda, it is rife with homophobia. But like I said, there are whole books, there are whole scholars who made their career on ginning up the fear. Dr. Umar raised $700,000 with the promise to protect us from the homosexuals. And so, you know, you can't tell me that homophobia isn't real, because I mean, I can't raise $700,000 from the Black community saying I'm going to use it to fight climate change. I'm going to use it to oppose imperialism. I can't raise $700,000 to protect Black people from real threats, real existential threats. But if I tell them the threat of gays, I'll stop your son from being gay by building a school in the southern woods for all boys, and I'll take all the boys and put them in this one cabin and teach them, you know, that's, you know, it's, I mean, it's just too much evidence of homophobia. And so a blatant denial of what's evidently true is another manifestation of a phobia, you know.
I would say that the straight Black pride movement, and, you know, I chalk it up to my naivete, even as I was, you know, working within this so-called African-centered movement. You know, looking at the straight Black pride movement, it was the first time that it actually ever occurred to me the potential that this movement could devolve into a neo-fascist movement when I saw the straight Black pride movement.
Yeah.
You know, that's the first movement, you know, contemporary movement, if you will, that I saw. This could end really badly. This can end extremely badly.
And you know, the one of the co-founders, the irritated genie of Sophis, he brutalized his wife. She said that he assaulted her. She was a woodworker. She would find old furniture and restore it. And after one of their arguments, he took a sledgehammer to a furniture piece that she was restoring, and then took the piece of smashed up furniture and the sledgehammer and put it on the front lawn and took a picture of it and posted it to social media, like, anybody want to come and get this trash or something. And she said that she endured years of psychological and physical torment, intimidation, and abuse. And then when he came into court, into family court, he came in there and with a white female lawyer, and then there was a campaign of harassment by the straight Black pride, and they claim their very purpose for existing is to protect the Black family. And their co-founder was tormenting and destroying a Black family, and they didn't do shit. Nobody's done or said shit. I just saw somebody post a picture of straight Black pride. Now he's into this COVID denial shit. He's moved on to some more bullshit. So straight Black pride had nothing to do with protecting the Black family, because many members of the straight Black pride family, number one, have children they're not being responsible for. She came and told all the dirt and posted it online. And if you could just hear the pain in this woman's voice, that didn't go viral. Same thing with Dr. Umar. I saw Dr. Umar, who wants to protect the black family from the gay agenda. He doxed his own, one of the mothers of his children and his wife, and told his irrational, erratic, violent followers to go into their home and their place of business and interrogate them about the family. I just can't imagine if my wife and I did embark on a path of separation or divorce, and I go and tell the Bro Diallo fans, here's the address where you can find my wife. This is where you can find her mother. The address. Go in there and tell her why she won't let me see my sons. I can't imagine ever doing that to my wife. And my followers are the best. They're some of the most beautiful, sane, rational people. But I would never give them the address to where they can go and find my wife. And nobody checked Dr. Umar for that. But these motherfuckers talk about they want to protect the black family. They have an absurd obsession with the gay community. And I've said to the straight black pride movement, if you can give me a rational reason, if you can give me any material evidence that some random gay dude being gay somewhere, black gay dude, is a harm for us, I will rejoin your movement. I was never a former member, but I was a non-official homophobe. And then I point out to them all anti-sodomy laws, gay laws, right now across the continent of Africa are all written by our colonial oppressors. I said, show me some indigenous anti-gay legislation. Mugabe was their hero because Mugabe was calling the prime minister sissies and all kind of homophobic slurs. But yet he was a Roman Catholic. Mugabe was a Roman Catholic and allowed the pedophile priest of the Roman Catholic Church to ravage Zimbabwe under his leadership. He never ousted the priest order. You know, it was a sanctuary for pedophiles, priests from the Roman Catholic Church. And they were praising him for outlawing homosexuality. And right now there are Africans being mutilated, tortured, and sentenced to prison because of these anti-gay laws that were written by evangelical white people in the United States. In Uganda.
Prayer breakfast.
Right. So homophobia is real as fuck, and it's harming African people. So, and you know, it just bothers me that we want to redefine something out of existence. There's no such thing as homophobia. I'm just going to redefine what homophobia is to the point where it's to absurdity. But it's a thing, you know. As a former homophobe, you can't, and you know, that's like I was a homophobic as hell. I was Umaring before Umar came on the scene. So you can't tell me it's not real. I harbored those sentiments my damn self. That's how you tell me it's not real. I really believed that gay people being able to live openly in society was a harbinger of the apocalypse. If that's not a phobia, what the fuck is?
What the next question is from Brother Kwasi. It was up here. Okay. Thoughts on repatriation to the African continent?
I embrace, support, and celebrate repatriation, but I don't want to give Black people a misinterpretation what it means to go back to the African continent. Returning home to our mother continent is not an escape from white imperialism, white domination, and the eventual collapse of the global ecosystem. So I support repatriation to reconnect with our brothers and sisters on the continent. I support repatriation to go there and humbly engage with our brothers and sisters on the continent and how we can be assets to the ongoing decolonial and African liberation struggles there. I do not support repatriation as a means of escape or escapism. And there are quite a few, even Malcolm talked about this back in the 50s and 60s. Where a lot of Black people go back to Africa and act just like fucking colonizers. They take their Yankee dollar and they build these pavilions and they have these house servants and they do nothing to contribute to the just aspirations of their new adopted nation. So I don't support Black people engaging in neo-colonial repatriation. I engage in Black people engaging in revolutionary repatriation. Revolutionary repatriation means you go there to continue the struggle. Colonial repatriation means you go there to escape struggle. And you do that by exploiting the vulnerability of Africans that are there now. But fortunately, most of the Africans I know that have repatriated have gone there and jumped in with both feet and joined the movements and the struggles and the efforts of the people on the ground there. And I honor that. I am almost to the point where I'm envious of that. So, keep up the good works. That's what I say to them. But we got to keep an eye out because, there are people like Akon and Jay-Z are promoting, I'm going to build me a villa in Africa. So, every brother ain't a brother, every sister ain't a sister. So that's my thoughts on it. If you can do it in a productive way that is not parasitic to our brothers and sisters already there struggling, then by all means, I think you should do it.
All right. Let's see. Geechee, is there anything you would like to add, brother?
Not at all. If y'all ready to call it a night, we can call it a night. I did type if I know the brother probably feel like he's not being heard, but if y'all have more time, we can go with him or we can move.
Well, here's the issue with that particular brother. We never want to have when we first started this show, what we wanted to be able to do was kind of break away from the way of we never wanted to avoid conflict. We didn't want to avoid the ability for people to sound off and everything. So I'm amenable to posting the brother's comments, but if what I don't want is just to devolve in a debate from the comment section,
right?
So if the brother wants to kind of summarize his concerns in like one last comment, I'll post that comment, and have Brother Diallo respond. But other than that, I don't really. Would you be fine with that, Brother Diallo?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Go ahead.
So let's look at I'm sorry, as said cheers. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. I most struggle with what to do. What should I do on a regular basis to move the needle? There are revolutionary organizations who I think do good work, but are not focused on these goals. So what does one do?
Start from where you are, work with what you got. To me, the only thing you could ask of any African people is to use their time, talent, and resources to make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of African people. If there are organizations, I'll give you an example. I was a member of the National Black United Front when I lived in Kansas City. It was one of the first Black organizations that I joined. And when I joined the National Black United Front, I was upset that they didn't have any type of ecological elements. They were focused on local electoral politics and African-centered education, everything good that I supported. And I came in on the ground level and did that. But I also started implementing ecological elements, because if we don't preserve the ecosystem, we're going to inherit or win back a dying or dead planet. So we started talking about urban agriculture and urban cultivation, veganism and environmentalism, ecological practices and things of that nature. So I was able, but I was only listened to because of my track record of contribution and loyalty and my organizational discipline. So if you join an organization that you think is good, that is not corrupt, but is incomplete, but you can develop your ability to influence that organization through having organizational discipline and developing a track record and a rapport within that organization. So you can radicalize that organization or expand that organization from within if you have that in your area. So build on what they've already established and work to strengthen and expand it to what it needs to be in that situation.
So Brother
and if
Sharif,
they're truly a revolutionary organization, they're not revolutionary if they're not open to dialogue, discourse, and reviewing their tactics and strategies and priorities and making the necessary adjustments. They're not revolutionary if they refuse to do that. They're reactionary.
Brother Sharif, he says, in this moment of Malcolm X's chickens roosting, I don't see how our condition change without revolution. of the global South versus global North to change relationships?
I agree. Yeah, that's right. Our conditions won't change without revolution. And I think, yeah, the global South, or the so-called formerly known as the third world, they will have to lead, and we will be revolutionary people who live within the belly of the beast. That has always been a strategy, not even a strategy that has been articulated by our revolutionaries, but we find out through research of leaked documents and the COINTELPRO papers, is that one of their worst fears is a functional unity between the global South and the marginalized people in the so-called first world, or the global North. So yes, that's something we are moving towards, and something that more and more people are becoming aware of. And that's why groups like ADOS have been boosted by our oppressors and our enemies. And these illegitimate people have been given a level of legitimacy because they're trying to break, saying, no, we just got to focus on Black Americans. So that's where you're seeing that to counter. ADOS is a counterintelligence program that has never ended. It's been adjusted and reworked, but counterintelligence programs have never ended. ADOS and FBA, Foundational Black America, is a counterintelligence program. Those organizations are set up for counterintelligence to counter our revolutionary aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you, Sharif.
Brother Kwasi, again, is there a general idea or vision of what we want America to look like for Black African people?
Yeah, we want it to look like a land where Black people are control the resources and institutions necessary for our survival, the spaces that we dwell. We also want reparations for African people. We also want land and material reparations for the Native American people. So it looks like a land where white people no longer have hegemony, where capitalism is no longer the economic system, and the federal government is dismantled, and power, resources, and lands are redistributed to the people justly. And all of the foreign empires, the foreign military infrastructure of the U.S. is dismantled and brought home. There are no more American military bases in foreign lands, just like there are no foreign bases in U.S. soil. And so that the U.S. must also pay reparations to Africa, to Haiti, and Honduras, and Panama. So it looks like a place that does just. It's very clear what right is to do. The oppressors like to pretend like there's all these levels of complexity, like, or as Professor Mackey was fond of saying, we really believe white people will do right by us once they figure out how, because the right thing to do is so complex to figure out. So the United States stopped functioning as an empire and starts functioning as or I hate to say this, but live up to the content of its creed, as Dr. King said, that it is owned by the people. All nations have to be the infrastructure, and the means of production should be held in common, and the ecosystem must be of highest priority to protect and preserve and restore the ecosystem. So that's the vision, that a socialist Pan-African utopia, if I had to say it in one sentence. And everything that entails.
Right. So we generally our BABTalks are roughly an hour, a little bit more. We've kept you up here for 2 hours. We appreciate your patience with us, and we thank you for indulging us and allowing us to kind of pick your brain and stuff about just different things. One last question from this brother Kofi. We don't, like I said before, we don't want to censor people who have disagreements. But again, he's typing a lot of stuff, and I just don't want to. I don't want like people trying to debate the guests from the comments.
He's been triggered. I didn't mean to trigger anybody, but hey, I don't mind staying over, because I know as soon as I walk out this office door, my wife gonna ask me to load the dishwasher, so we can go. We can pull an all-nighter, like, hey, how am I, So
let me see if
he be like, load the dishwasher so I can make dinner. So I'm probably gonna be on here even talking even after y'all get off. Just talking to myself, so I don't have to go out there.
Oh, he just brought the last one. I look like it.
Yeah. So one more from Kofi. Are you a psychiatrist, psychologist, or mental health care professional? If not, you are
Well,
no.
I think we have to discard that one because he said homophobia is not even a real thing. So it wouldn't make sense for him to ask for a diagnosis because he don't believe it's a real thing. So let's just skip that one.
But homophobia is not a clinical diagnosis. Homophobia is an ideology and a political position. It's an ideological position, not a clinical position. I know the word phobic is kind of a misnomer because it's not. And in fact, my wife is a psychologist and she educates other psychologists. So, I don't know if that gives me credit, but I know she steals my formal education is in political science and public policy analysis. So, and public policy development and implementation. If you had to see if you could see the little degrees on there, that's what my formal education. So no, but I'm not speaking about homophobic as a mental disorder. I'm speaking as homophobia as a historic, political, and ideological phenomenon. I'm sure you're quite mentally healthy, I hope, Kofi.
All right. So Geechee, is there anything you want to add?
No, that's it. Wait, that's not the question. Contradiction. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't have anything else. I know. We did try to get the guy Elder Oluwatunji. He wrote a book about I can't remember the name of it. The LGBTQ book. I don't remember the name of it, but we were supposed to get him on the panel for the debate, but he couldn't make it. So
that's the one I couldn't make it to.
That's the one y'all would have been on it together, but that's the one
I actually sent an actual member of the LGBT community to go and speak on the behalf of their community because me, I'm an alpha. Me, I can't really. I'm the worst spokesman for their community there could be.
Right. Yeah.
You know how I am with the ladies. Let me stop playing. But yeah,
what I'll say is, with most, and this is why I think reading Chris Hedges is also another reason why I think it's important, because with reading him, for me, it was the first time that someone pointed out, to me in my intellectual development, that when you have people in a certain position, people who have been oppressed or politically subjugated or economically marginalized, you will have people who will rise up amongst them and say, hey, don't look at the bigger system. Look at this other marginalized group over here. No, they're your problem. They're the ones who are causing all these issues in our community. And if we deal with them, our problems will be solved. And I find that, astounding, because we're being distracted, we're being, sent off on these kind of, tangents and say, oh, the black gays in our community are the problem. The LGBT is the problem. So I asked the question rhetorically. So what are we to do about the LGBT? Because we're having a lot of these discussions in African-centered spaces. The gays are bad. They're doing this. The gay agenda. So it then begs the question, I guess, what is then to be done? What is the only logical conclusion from everything that's being said about gay people or the LGBT community, especially within the black space, within our black community?
Well, you'll find with a lot of these alpha males, they act just like Judeo-Christian white men, and they get their, they mimic them. So you'll find that many of their arguments about not just gays, but the role of the man in the family and the how the women is harming and taken away, and these issues, because white men have always had hangups and tied their masculinity to weird stuff. So they start to mimic. They just drape a kente cloth over Judeo-Christian ideas about sexuality and morality. That's all. They're just mimicking, just like a black capitalist. A lot of people that are claimed to be Afrocentric, they just draping a kente cloth over Western maladaptation and dysfunction. And they have almost identical arguments. Like literally, Dr. Umar, if he would just stop saying Pan-Africanist and said Jesus, he could literally be the leader of Focus on the Family, or the Heritage Foundation, because his ideas are identical.
I wonder if we could one day do something like a versus battle and put the black capitalists or the narrow nationalists with zero class agenda versus LGBTQ and see who's more harmful, and like break it down scientifically, like who did what and how what.
Right. Well, like I said, there are a lot of gay Uncle Toms and gay coons and minstrels, but I don't think it's their sexual identity that makes them Toms, coons, and minstrels. So I have no issue with calling out people for any type of harmful ideas or positions they have against the black community. But these guys getting raised, but it's easier. I think in these guys' ideas, it's easier to diagnose the problem as gay dudes, and then as opposed to going up against the Pentagon. Hell, I wish they were right about that. I'd rather get out here and say, well, if we could just stop the gays, we'd be free, because they're a relatively small portion of the population, and they're a vulnerable portion of the population. So yeah, I wish. It's like, it's easier to pick out. That is literally called scapegoating. That's scapegoating. It's what they do. It's like, well, my life is not what it should be. I'm not content with my condition. So I could either identify the true source of my discontent, or I could, transfer or project that onto another vulnerable source or another vulnerable population and attack them. So that's all that is. It's projection. And a lot of these Afrocentric black men have not processed their Judeo-Christian indoctrination or their Islamic indoctrination. And so that's where it's rooted to, because they really have no true African foundation for their homophobia. I'm sorry to trigger you. Trigger warning. I'm going to say that word for their homophobia. And so they like to distort the meaning and understanding of what homophobia and homophobic means.
All right. So as we wrap up, brothers, are there any last remarks that you would like to make to the audience?
Yeah, and, DialloKenyatta.com. Check that out. I'm going to be updating and redesigning that site. My wife and I were sitting down looking over some redesigns and updates for the post-pandemic reemergence of Bro Diallo show. I appreciate you brothers having me on. I enjoyed this discussion, and you delayed me having to load the dishwasher, which was the highlight of my evening. So this really was a good replacement for dishwasher. I'm waiting for my son to get home. He's staying out too, so we all ducking dishes. So I appreciate you helping me induct the dishes. That's a solid. So if I could ever help you brothers out in such a way, just don't hesitate to call. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. We appreciate you coming on, and we definitely appreciate our audience, and we'll keep everyone updated as far as we have a couple of guests lined up for next month for our BABTalk next month, but we'll see how that goes. We're going to put out a couple of more flyers letting people know who's coming up. Geechee, do you want to tell the people who's coming up for January?
So January we have Derek Hamilton, one of the economists who's been giving us some good content that's useful for political education. And hopefully we'll be able to, disabuse people from information that's been put out there, including people who say they use Derek Hamilton as their source and they still lying. So hopefully that'll be a really good one.
All right, so we're that's for January. We're kind of up in the air for December. We're trying to lock down, probably do 2 BABTalks in December. and so we'll let everyone know about that. That's to be determined.
Diallo might like the agrarian option that we might go with. I don't know if he's a liberation theology, but he's a preacher land justice guy. So
yeah. So, I mean, well, yeah, the brother, one of the brothers that we're reaching out to, he deals a lot with ecological justice and environmental justice, fighting against environmental racism, and to I think a point that Brother Diallo made earlier, that we don't really discuss that a lot in Black spaces. We don't really discuss ecology and ecological justice in African-centered spaces, and that's, I think, to our detriment, very much so. So we definitely need.
My wife and I have been working with one of the local state representatives to bring agricultural funds to urban farmers, because billions of dollars is spent in rural white America, in corporate welfare, really, to give agricultural subsidies. So we're trying to get agricultural subsidies for urban growers and local growers to help support their efforts to localize the food system. So yeah, I really appreciate that. I'm glad you guys are getting that information and awareness about ecology out to the larger African community.
Absolutely, and when perhaps you and your wife can come on the show and talk about your efforts regarding that. So that would definitely be a great show topic to discuss.
Right.
So, but with that said, we want to thank everyone for chiming in, for supporting our work, for looking at our content. You can go to our YouTube channel. You go to our website, blackvoter.com, and you can check us out online. Oh, our study group right now, we're reading The Whiteness of Wealth by Sister Dorothy Brown. That's what we're currently reading for our study group. So if you ever want to come into the study group, it's every Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every Sunday at 6:30. Every Sunday at 6:30. So if you want to join up with that, you're more than welcome to. With that said, brothers and sisters, we say peace. We'll see you next
Good night.
time.
Peace.